ultimately it's you're the most satisfied when you're working out of that place of passion and fulfillment. And when you're doing that, you're way more likely to reach your potential, the highest points.
Faithfulness is at the core of me being a founder.
Good business values and ethics come from the Bible.
Lead with your relationship with Christ. Lead with your knowledge of the gospel.
What's going on, everybody? This is Jamie Kane with the Faithful Founder Podcast. I am joined here with TJ Russell, the man, the myth, the legend. TJ is a man of many talents, like for real. Like, you're incredible, man. It's been awesome to work with you. But thanks for coming in and sitting down, man.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you, real fast, for people who don't know who you are, what you do, give us a real quick recap of TJ?
Yeah, so I do a lot of things.
Yes, you do.
I would say mainly for work, business stuff. I'm a designer, so that mainly the categories of graphic design and web design. So that's kind of my bread and butter. That's what I do. And then to kind of go along with that, I do search engine optimization and dabble in some marketing stuff.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, TJ, I met TJ because you did our logo. Like, you helped us. I did a really rough version of our logo, and TJ cleaned it up real nice and made it available to be trademarked, was the big thing. So, and then he also did our website, helpghost.ai, if anyone wants to go there. But it's a great website. He killed that. But it's interesting because when we started working together, before we started working together, you kind of gave me a quote. We went over some things, and I went to your website and I went down to your bio and the About Me section, and read over your experience, everything that you had done. And then in your bio on your website, it says friend of Jesus, and that really caught me because even if people are Christian, they're not putting that on their websites. They're not putting it on their professional profiles,
Yeah.
Why did you feel like you needed to do that?
I think I just reached a point where I'm like not worried about what people think.
Fair enough. All right, interview's over, dude.
Because I think, I don't know, just kind of throughout my life, I've learned that like the most important opinion is God's opinion. And so for me, it's just like, and I had seasons where I fluctuated. It's like, should I even put that on there? Should I not? Like, I probably had 2 or 3 different, my own websites over the years. And I never really put that on there or mentioned it. Or I would mention it in a very like politically correct way.
Sure.
Some way to kind of like sugarcoat it a little bit. But I finally like came to the conclusion that it was like, God is the one who provides for me and he's the one who's going to sustain me. So like, why would I be afraid of putting him first in every area, especially work. Yeah. So I was just like, why not?
What's the, like, am I the only person that's ever brought that up to you? I can't imagine so.
No, so
because I emailed you, like, man, like, I feel like we're gonna go with you. And I sent an email saying, I literally screenshotted it and circled friend of Jesus, and I said, and I love this. I wanted to make that evidently apparent, like that you were working with a Christian as well. That on our website, like you asked us, hey, to think of some quotes that we wanted to put on our website for the 3 founders of Help Ghost, right? And my quote was a C.S. Lewis quote, right? Aim at heaven, you'll get earth thrown in. Aim at earth, and you'll get neither. Right? Was a quote that I felt was adjacent to business as well as spiritual. But I wanted people to understand, like, I am a Christian and I'm leading this company, right? So but anyways, when I saw that with you, I really just was like happy to see that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's just not, I've worked with a lot of people, a lot of designers and freelancers and stuff like that. And, whether they're Christian or not, they don't typically put any kind of details like that on the profile,
Yeah. No, it's just like, I don't know. It helps me feel more okay with myself, just being genuine and putting that out there. Because it's the most important thing to me. So it's like, I'm gonna put it out there.
So going back to your original question, was I so you've had other people bring it up to you?
I'm not that specifically, but
interesting.
I have had people mention just through conversation, like meeting with a potential client.
Yeah.
I'll even bring up Jesus, in those meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of just follow the leading of the Spirit, where if I feel like I need to mention something, or they ask about my kids, and then they get into, whenever it gets into any like type of personal life, which I'm a strong believer in making personal connections with people.
Yeah.
Even if it's like an interview thing where seeing if we want to work together.
Yeah.
Cause I'm just a very normal, down to earth guy. So like, I'm not trying to be flashy or businessy, and like, this is my skill set. This is what you get.
So you get.
But also to go along with that is like, yeah, I don't know. I just love people and value people because I believe they're created in the image of God. And so I try to just weave in that side of, or just try to weave in the Lord into even those types of conversations. So it has gotten brought up in conversation, but
Sure.
I don't think necessarily someone's mentioned it specifically from my website. But
Do you feel in those sorts of conversations, that's a evangelist opportunity, or like, or you just feel like as a disciple, this is such a big part of my life that I'm not evangelizing to them. I'm just stating who I am. It's the authenticity of it.
yeah, it's just kind of like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
If this offends you, then it's probably not going to work.
Yeah. And that's how we feel. I mean, like at least for me, we've said internally, and obviously on the Faithful Founder podcast, we've talked about that. Like Help Ghost is inherently a Christian-led company. Like our internal mission at Help Ghost is to glorify God's name through what we're doing at the company, right? Is to use Help Ghost as an offering to him, right? And people may say, well, that's kind of, God doesn't need your company, right? Like you're kind of just using that as an opportunity, like, a Christian opportunity to prop yourself up or whatever, not that anyone's ever said that to us. I'm a person that I have a lot of arguments in my own head with myself. I challenge a lot of my own views, which I think is important to do. But for me, this is something I've wanted to do anyways. Like I've always wanted to be a founder. I've always wanted to get into tech and SaaS, and that's just been my dream since my sophomore year of college. I realized that's what I wanted to do. Right.
That's cool.
And when I was on the verge of founding Help Ghost, I told our founders, I'm like, we're going to do this anyway. And if we're going to do it anyway, it's going to be to the glory of God's name.
Yeah.
Right. It's not, I'm not, it's, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen with propping up the name of Christ, with propping up the name of God and showing people, we are unabashedly a Christian-led company. And more importantly, it's, and I would like to ask you about this as well, our values are Christian, right? Like our first value that we put down for Help Ghost was be ethical, right? And that comes from the Christian viewpoint of doing the right thing by loving others as you love yourself, as you're commanded by Christ to do. Do you find that like in a business setting, or I'm sure having worked with you, you have, like it seems like your Christian values come through in your work, because you definitely go the extra mile. You did with me, working with me. So
yeah, I think like having that relationship with the Lord should affect your work. It should affect every area of your life. And good business values and ethics comes from the Bible. Like there's no other way to put it.
Yeah.
Like even reading through Proverbs and all the wisdom that the Bible has about like being faithful with the little things and being consistent and just all the wisdom that's in there.
Yeah.
It's really smart to include that into your business. It'd be really foolish not to, honestly. So yeah, a lot of the values and the ethics and things that come into play when you're running your business, if you're being faithful with that, God will bless it so much. Yeah. And yeah, it's just,
I have two questions, I guess. The first thing is, I'll say both questions. I want to ask where God has blessed you in your business, but we'll answer that one second. Don't forget that question, because I will. The first one is, what values specifically have you implied? Like what biblical values have you put into Sunbear Digital, right?
Yeah. I would say I can't necessarily point to one specific one, but I would say trying to really manifest the fruit of the Spirit. And so that's like love, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. There's a bunch more in there. Faithfulness.
Sure. There's lots.
So, yeah, the 9 fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah.
So, trying to actually manifest that in my life through even like in my work. So when I'm firing up my computer and getting ready to dive in, like making sure that I'm not wasting my own time, wasting my client's time, and making sure that I'm treating each client with honor. You know, I think honor is probably a big value that comes up a lot, because as a business owner, I understand like this is how I feed my family. There's a lot at risk when you're running your own business.
Yeah.
So I want to treat other people's time with honor, their business with honor, and I want to give them my best, because if I honor them, I feel like they're worth my best. So
Yeah.
Approaching it that way. And sometimes even if the client is not, the ideal client,
Sure.
or it's someone who's like, I don't really have the budget for this. Sometimes I will still just like out of a place of honor and just.
What do you mean by honor? Like, what is that? Like when you say, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different ways to say I'm honoring this person, right? Like, and it's cultural too. Like honor is different things, different places. From the Christian perspective, Christian business owner perspective, right? Like, what does that mean?
I would say for me, and I don't even know like if this is one of the definitions or not, but for me, honor looks like seeing someone the way that God sees them, and trying to value them in the way that God values them. So when I look at someone from the world's standards, where maybe they're not this huge successful company, or maybe they're not, like deserving of honor in the world's eyes, but maybe the way God sees them, though, is they are worthy of that respect and that honor, and they're a faithful husband, or like they're a good dad. It's like, all those things matter too. So just trying to look at people through the way that God would see them, rather than like the world standards.
I love that. What comes to my mind is like, that's the greatest form of honor, is to look at people the way that God looks at them, to treat them the way that God would treat them. Like, I don't think there's any other way there's other ways to honor people. I don't think on the pedestal of honor, right? Like at the top of that would be what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like to love them as God would, which is incredibly difficult. Like that is not an easy task to see them as God would, right? Like that is to me, that's a lifelong pursuit, because what I know for me, I look at people and, you two guys that are in the room with me right now, I see God in y'all. I see disciples of Christ. Like that's evidently apparent, right? And then when I leave here and the guy that cuts me off in traffic, he's a son of Satan, So it's like, what I'm saying? It's hard to be consistent with that.
It is so hard, yeah.
How do you consistently honor people? Because I'm sure you, in a Christian founder sense, especially where yours is such like you're working with the client a lot. Like with us, when we have a client on board, like we'll speak to them every once in a while, but they're really working within our platform and our product, right? With you, they're working directly with you on a day-to-day. I know with us, we work together a ton through our projects, right? And we'll continue to do so. With the harder clients, though.
Yeah. So I think I can honor people, but also still have respect for myself and have boundaries, which has been a huge learning thing for me. So where I would go above and beyond, and I would be like super gracious and like honor my clients, but some clients would take advantage of that. So after a while, I kind of I would wrestle with that a lot, and but realizing it's actually good for them and for me if I have strong boundaries and I stick to those, because it shows that not only am I having respect and honor for them, I'm also honoring and respecting myself. And that's just as important as honoring and respecting other people.
Yeah.
Where it's...
Because you're also creating the image of God, right? I think Yeah, I know for myself, I don't know about you, I don't want to speak for you. But it's easy for me to say, yeah, other people are created in the image of God. It's easy for me to say, yes, they were children of God, but I forget that of myself. So that I'm also a child of God, that I also have the image and likeness of the Creator in me.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, like, Nation and I were, talking about this the other day about self-respect, right, and self-confidence. And we had a really interesting, conversation of, it's not, you take the self out of that. It's just confidence and respect for God's creation.
So good.
Right. Like that's really what it comes down to, is that because my entire life, I've struggled with self-confidence and self-worth, but I feel like when we were in that conversation, we took out, like I said, the self part of that.
Yeah.
Do I see the worth in God's hands?
Yeah.
Which I am, right? Do I have confidence in what the Creator has made, which He made me,
So good.
It's no longer confidence in myself. It's no longer the worth of myself. It's seeing the worth of the Creator. It's seeing the worth of God, the Father, and so much worth and so much value that He sent His only begotten Son to be hung on a cross and to suffer for us, right?
Yeah.
And to be risen from the dead for us, right? Like that's where that confidence and value come from. I don't know your thoughts on that. But.
I love that. And I just think even the phrase of saying like removing self, isn't that kind of the goal? It's like, getting yourself out of the way, because we get in our own way most of the time. And,
100%.
It's like,
I can speak from personal experience. It's almost always myself,
Yeah. And it's in a lot of that, like, insecurities and like self-loathing or not feeling good enough or not feeling worthy enough. A lot of that is rooted in selfishness and just introspection. But when we get outside of ourselves and we look at it from like what you were saying, I am God's creation and God doesn't make junk. He's the greatest designer and creator who's ever lived. So like he even says, he's like, you're fearfully and wonderfully made and you're made in His image. So it's just being able to get out of our own way so that we can see ourselves the way that He sees us. And that comes back into like honor as well. So it's just,
do you feel like I had never thought about this until just now, but you like this idea of honor. I think in the confidence and the worth of the creation, which is yourself, right? You're honoring the Creator, right? Like if you look at like a potter and he's made this beautiful vase for some people, and uppity people, but there's a vase, right? And you look at it and you're honoring like this beautiful. Well, that vase isn't created in and of itself. It didn't just appear. You're not honoring the vase. You're honoring the hand of the person that molded the vase and that's put the work in, right?
Yeah.
I never thought about it till like just now,
Yeah.
That's
no, that's spot on, because even when it comes to judging people or judging ourselves or, because I like similar to you, I also had that comparison thing, or it's like, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough.
Yeah.
I'm not enough. But looking at it from your perspective of the potter, and he is our potter. He's the master potter. And it's actually dishonoring to Him to say that about ourselves. And, so I think
that's so interesting. Yeah. When you look at that, cause it's like, once again, for me, I lately I made a concerted effort. I have a pretty good temper, right? And so I have a short temper. I have my entire life, right?
Okay.
I'm Italian and Irish, you know what I'm saying? So like I have zero chance of temperament,
It's good, but
and height. Yeah, neither one of them, No, I have a bad temper and it's short, but typically it's shorter lived, nowadays, but than in my youth. And I've made a concerted effort over the last like year or so. Like I've seen that's probably one of I know it may not be my biggest weakness, but it's one of the biggest weaknesses, right? And I find myself having to, restrain that, obviously, and working to restrain that, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about the Creator in His hands, and we're talking about it's also, I think, when you let the worldly, I'll say passions, right? Like the world, I think obviously anger is born of passion, really.
Yeah.
Right. And lust is born of passion, and, and coveting is born of passion and pride, right? So, pride, I guess, is the first great sin, right? That we've all heard. But anyways, with all that, it almost feels like, you're perverting the creation.
Yeah.
you're disrespecting the creation, which is of yourself, if you're not honoring it. Which kind of comes back to you, like you're honoring your boundaries or telling people, no, I've set these things up. I do have love for myself. Not that I put myself above anything else, but I have love for the creation. I have love for the image of God that is in me, and respecting the potter. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you, going back to the question, I actually didn't forget. So here you go. I slept, I guess, all right last night, but, the blessings of the Lord in your business. I'm a really, I push back a lot against, I guess, what they call the prosperity gospel.
Oh yeah.
A lot. You know, it's Christ doesn't promise us prosperity. Actually, he promises suffering and pain, but he also promises that he's overcome that all. He's overcome the tribulation in the world for us, you know?
Yeah.
And he probably also promises life because of him, you know? But with that being said, he's also the author of all things that are good.
Yes.
You know, and so the blessings, you know, trying to push away from the idea of prosperity gospel, but also recognizing that God does bless those who do glorify his name and that do love him, right? I don't know about your experience in that, but.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like his faithfulness is never ending. He's so faithful. And it might be up until that last minute where you're like, all right, Lord, I need a project. This one's wrapping out. And then sure enough, every time comes through like clockwork. But I think for a lot of people, when you say blessing and prosperity, they just think money.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. At least in Western society, for sure.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But Jesus, he had really interesting views on money. He could pull money out of fish. So he did. I don't think he's
nothing to him, right? Yeah, exactly.
So, but for us, like we get wrapped up in money, and he said very clearly, like you can't serve God and money. So the blessings, they have been financial at times, but other times the blessing is, oh, I don't actually have that much to work on, so I get to spend a long weekend away with my family. Or I get to work on my house and get all this stuff done that I wouldn't have had time for if I was in the hustle mindset and I was just like grinding and grinding and grinding, even if I didn't have work. So sometimes the blessing just looks like peace, where I can rest. Sometimes the blessing looks like I have, I can work 12-hour days because I have so much work to do, and it's like there's grace on it and it feels right. And then sometimes the blessing looks like being able to travel and like work from wherever. So the blessing looks like a lot of different things. Sometimes the blessing looks like my kids can come into my room and just like sit on my lap while I work. Yeah. And there's just so many different ways that he's blessed it. Even today, like sometimes I just kind of pinch myself, and on paper, I'm definitely not the most like wildly successful designer out there.
Right.
But sometimes I feel so blessed and successful because like just the fact that I can, like today I was able to work in the morning, and then I felt like I wanted to like work on making a new desk. So I got to just stop and go out in my garage and start making a desk.
And there's a lot of people that can't do that. They can't leave their 9 to 5, right?
Right.
Go home and make a desk, let alone visit their kids for 5 minutes,
Exactly. So I'm so grateful and thankful, and I can see all the different blessings in the way that it's affected my life where, but yeah, going back, even monetarily, that's probably been like the biggest stressor, and probably everyone's biggest stressor is money.
Absolutely.
Paying bills, feeding your family, running your business, all that stuff. But going on this journey of learning to trust him is such a crazy roller coaster.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And like sometimes I feel like I forget so fast and so easily that it's like every time something dries up, he brings something new. And that's just been the way from the start. That's how it's been. And I'm not saying that that's how it's going to be for everyone,
Yeah.
But for me, in my experience, that's how I've experienced his, that's what I've seen.
I love that. I think the thing that stood out for me is, as founders, right? It's, entrepreneurs, it can be, we measure success really only one way: revenue, production, right? Like, that's the point of a business, is to produce revenue, just on paper, I should say, right? Like, that's not the sole purpose, right? But I find it really interesting because most founders, I know myself included, think that way. Like, we've got to produce dollars, But I love that what you said is you recognizing the blessings as a Christian founder is not just a monetary.
No,
It's everything that comes along with that. Like, it's funny, man, because when I started at Help Ghost, I took a pretty big pay cut. Like, you know how that goes. Like, I'm talking significant. We're making a lot less than we had for a long time.
Right.
And yet I'm happier.
Yeah.
I'm still stressed out. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I was talking to my wife the other day. I'm like, you could give me triple what I was making before, I still wouldn't take it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just happier. I'm getting to do something I feel fulfilled in doing. And I also get to walk out of my office and go hang out with my kids for a couple minutes. You can go in the backyard, and you know what I'm saying? And or like you said, like, my daughter opens the door. She comes in all the time, and he says,
like, son of Zoo,
yeah, my son was on my chair last night and freaking out. You trying to grab my stuff off my desk, but I just felt like I last night I knelt and I was just like watching him play on my chair, and I'm like, this is awesome, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get to be here and see them, even when, and there's been weeks, even though I work from home because we're a remote first company, that I feel like I don't get to see my family a lot, which is kind of crazy that I'm home, but then it's also, I get to have that moment of clarity of, that's my choice. Like, I can still walk, I can take a minute and walk out, and I don't have to be, business productive. I can be dad productive for a minute.
Yeah.
I can be husband productive for a minute, or I can stop and read my Bible. You know what I'm saying? I can stop and say a prayer, right? Those are things I've been trying to work on as well, and adding those. But going back to that, I think that's a really important message because our podcast is centered towards Christian founders, but Christian founders that are in the midst of it, not guys that have already made it.
Yeah.
Faithful founder is about being a founder, which is a gritty word.
Yeah.
You're slogging through it, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, for some reason, I just thought of the swamp where Yoda lives right now, but that's the image that pumped in my head, of like, that's what it feels like to be a founder, man. You're trying to balance on the rock and this frogman's yelling at you, and you're trying to make it work, But it's an important reminder for guys that are there, whether what stage they're in their life, maybe they're older or they're younger. It's like the blessings come in different ways when you're a Christian founder. Don't measure your blessings by the monetary, by the client that comes to the door. I think, it's a beautiful sentiment, So how have you seen God provide for Sunbear Digital?
So I'll kind of just tell a story, or tell the story of how everything started and where I'm at today. But I started doing Sunbear as a side hustle because I was working at a Birkenstock shoe store.
Nice.
Feeding people with sandals and making, I don't know how much money, so little.
That's awesome.
And I had just moved to California, married my wife, and
Not from California.
No, we met in Africa. And then I was born and raised in Detroit.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk about all of it. Yeah.
So we met overseas. She lived in California, grew up in a small mountain town, and then moved to the coast. And then so I flew out there. We got married. But yeah, it wasn't until we had our son Abner, that I was like, all right, I can't just work at Birkenstocks as the shoe guy. Like, I need a career, So I've always loved design, and I always loved art and things like that. So I actually originally went to school for graphic design, but then my teacher kind of taught me that the only way you could use it is like designing soup labels and like food labels and things like that. So I was like, I don't want to do that. So I never really pursued it after that. But anyway, so I started getting into branding, and I had friends, and they had businesses or things like that. So I would do logos and took some online courses, YouTube University, all that stuff.
Right.
And just kind of took what I learned, all the fundamentals at school, and blended that with new stuff that I was learning, and eventually figured out that I have a knack for it, and kind of just fell in love with it and started growing my business. And I was in, I want to say I think 2017 was when it really started picking up. And then I kind of kept it on the side for a long time because I didn't really feel safe, diving, head in, just full time.
It's a big jump, man.
Yeah.
It's a scary jump,
Yeah. So it wasn't until
Do you have a pen I can use? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. It wasn't until I want to say 2020. I want to say it wasn't until 2020 where I actually went full time. And then it was because I had reached the point where I had so many, it was actually with search engine optimization. I had so many clients that I was just running out of time, and I was started making pretty much as what I was making at my full-time job with the clients that I had. So I was like, all right, it'll be less money, but it'll give me the bandwidth and the brain space to even scale more and take on more clients. So I ended up doing that, and it was great. Like,
Were you praying this whole time? I mean, obviously, you're obviously a Christian, but like, was this a subject of your prayers of, I really want to do this, help me figure this out?
I think it was just, it was more of a desire.
Yeah.
And it was a desire, and I had frustrations with the 9 to 5, and it sounds bad, but I had frustrations with having a boss.
No, I feel you.
So it's like,
That's when I realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur, because I hated working for other people.
yeah, where it's
Just
like,
being real about it,
but so being in a position where it's like you're taking orders, and even as a service, you take orders from clients in a sense, but not being able to, I don't know, have a voice and have, I don't know, just, but yeah, so went full-time Sun Bear, loved it, really got into it, but then I started feeling the stress of being the only person responsible for your income. And it's like,
your wife staying at home.
this is all on me. Yeah. So another blessing is my wife has never had to work.
Yeah.
So we celebrated our 9-year anniversary in September.
Yeah.
So that's been a crazy blessing.
That's the biggest blessing for my wife since we had our children, is stopped working. That's been that's probably the biggest blessing. Is that,
so good for your kids.
Yeah, 100%. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, yeah.
Guys, that is
so I did that for a while, and then I think I think because of how smooth the transition was, I didn't have to, my faith or my trust hadn't really been tested up until that point. It wasn't until, I want to say late 2021, maybe early 22, where I just started feeling the fear and the stress of like, what if all my clients leave? What if, projects stop coming in? And I didn't really have like a reason to doubt or to not trust in the Lord, but it just kind of crept in. And at that point, I just got kind of obsessed with how do I find new clients? How do I do this? How do I do that? Not that any of those things are bad to know, but like I was just coming out at it from a place of fear.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you feel like that was led because of a loss of trust, or maybe not a loss of trust, but maybe not putting enough trust, and that's where the fear crept in?
I think it was just not really putting enough trust in God, and
I feel that.
Yeah, just allowing, especially when life stuff happens, if there's medical bills, if there's, the car needs work, all that stuff, you get hit with some, like, I didn't really know about taxes, and I didn't have anyone guiding me through that. So my first time paying taxes, it was like, ugh, holy cow. Like, not paying over throughout the year and just getting that one big thing at the end. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I need to have some more kids to help like counteract this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think the fear crept in, and then I actually got an offer for a job from my friend, the company that he was working at. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like I get to work, like I'm going to work with a team, and it's at this cool company, and they make games and like all this stuff. And I was going to be their marketing guy, and it was, they gave me like almost what I was making. And you know, you got the insurance and all the stuff that comes with it, all the benefits. But it was over off of Eagle Road. So, you know, it was getting into like, I would have to drive, you know, it was like half hour in the morning and an hour to get home at, you know, in the traffic. So
I'm from California though. It's not too bad, right?
yeah, but we were actually in a smaller town in California. So it was not LA. No,
Yeah.
no, yeah. No, I couldn't do that.
Yeah. Okay, I understand.
That the honor thing in that kind of traffic, that would be the biggest challenge of all.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I know. So I ended up working at that company, and just started feeling so not happy. The stress didn't go away because eventually they started laying people off because of the economy. And I mean, I survived 4 waves of layoffs, which is like incredible.
That's scary.
But it was like when I got hired there, it was 60 people. And then when I left, there was 8 people. So it's just like,
that's wild.
Nuts.
Yeah. And living that kind of fear is
yeah,
tough, man. Like it's real. Fear and stress affects me physically. Like I have physical, responses to it, and so it's I think it's not only say misunderstood, but it's definitely, people don't talk about it enough, like how that can really affect you and your mindset and your health, and, living on edge, it can affect your family life and everything that comes along with that,
Yeah. So it was like, yeah, that's so true. I was getting my paycheck every couple weeks, direct deposit money in the bank. It was just there. But that fear, that stress still didn't go away. And that now instead of having to like trust in God, it was almost like I had to trust in the economy, and I had to trust in that the leader, the boss of the company is making good decisions. And, but so it was just like, it was weird. And my wife, she's amazing, and the whole time she's kind of reminding me, she's like, why did you even take that job in the first place? Why didn't you just keep doing what you're doing? Like, you were growing, you were successful, like you had clients. But I think in the back of my head, I was like, taking this job is going to be safe.
Yeah.
This is going to be safer for me and for our family.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. But that was just kind of an illusion, really. Yeah. It's so many people got laid off, and the economy does things, and it's just, there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
But at least, so yeah, all that to say, I ended up quitting at the end of,
which is way after you quit, like after all of these layoffs. They're like, we literally saved your job.
No, and it had gotten to the point where it was like, they didn't really need a marketing person. So I actually ended up doing like music stuff for some of their games, because I'm a musician. It's in my family, and we've done music a lot. But so I ended up doing music stuff, and so they were kind of using me for like odds and ends. I wasn't really doing marketing, and it became this messy thing. And it was like, I don't know what they're gonna try to use me for next, but I'm gonna quit and do like, and the other thing was, I felt like God was like saying like, all right, are you done? Like, you ready to move back out on your own again? It almost felt like if you've like moved out from your parents' house, you were independent, grown up, and then you move back in, and it's like, depending on your living situation, it's probably not the healthiest environment.
Yeah.
So then you get to the point where like, all right, I need to move back out. That's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like, all right, I need to go back out on my own and just be free and be able to like run a business and do it the kingdom way, and just trust in God and not have to trust in a man or, the decision.
I love the idea that as a founder, that's who you're putting your trust in. Yeah, because you really are, man. Like, you got to run. Let's say you're not a believer, right? You're agnostic, whatever, and
you kind of just putting your trust in yourself, you know, the economy, luck, a lot of it. Like luck goes, I mean, I've heard it a million times that, you know, there's a lot of luck that goes into being a founder, you know? And for me, you know, when you look at God as the arbiter of my success, and its success may not look like what I want it to, but even from an earthly perspective, the success of that, it'll be up to him to provide those things for me because he's the author of the good things that come. Right. And good may not always be what we believe is good, obviously. Like we know a lot of times that what we think we need is clearly not what we need. And what we need is to be humbled or to suffer, to have hardship, whatever it may be. And that's the best thing for our souls and our purification, everything that comes along with that, right? Yeah. But going back to the idea that I just love that you stepping out on your own was the catalyst to put more trust into God and say, okay, you're the one that I'm answering to now.
Yeah.
Not a guy in an executive chair, you know, whatever it may be, you know.
Yeah. Some tech wannabe who's sorry. I don't want to.
We'll cut that out.
Yeah. I don't want to talk bad about anyone, but yeah.
See, it's hard to stay it down and it's hard to honor all the time. I'm telling you.
But I would just, so once I quit that job, which I pray that company does well, like I really do. But once I quit that job, I took the whole month of January off, and I was starting, essentially I'd kept like 1 or 2 clients on retainer, just kind of, and not even, and just kind of hourly, like as needed kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of was starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And God just started bringing people in my life, and I didn't tell anyone that I was looking for work. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't do any outreach. Like, I don't know, which I'm not recommending that to people. Yeah. Like,
sure,
definitely reach out to clients, like trying to find work, all that.
You just jumped in. You said, this is it.
But I just quit, and I was like, all right, Lord, I just need to have some time, have some space, and get back to that connection. Because working at that job definitely affected my connection with the Lord too. But yeah, started it, and then finished. We were building a tiny house for my mother-in-law on our property. So finished the tiny house in January, and she was like, hey, I want to pay you for the work that you're doing. So that kind of became a source of income.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's a blessing. That's cool. Getting to work with my hands and do all that. And then
it sounds like a mental reset because it's so much different than what you had been doing at that point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and then once February hit, I started, just doing work just started coming in actually. And then projects started coming up, and then.
Was it referrals or something, or like?
Yeah, it's my work has been, it's been 98% referrals.
That's awesome.
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
And that goes back to just doing everything with excellence. And I feel like if you're good at what you do, people are going to want you. People are going to tell other people about you.
Yeah.
If they trust in your work and they trust in you as a person, word will spread.
Yeah. I think it's like a secondary blessing of living the Christian life is that there is, look, I mean, there's a lot of opposition to Christianity and Christians in the world, right? Like I think in the West, we're kind of sheltered from that a little bit, you know, because it is such a Christian, you know, heavily populated area. But I mean, even today, you see more and more people leaving the faith or not believing in anything, right? And there is a lot of opposition in America to Christianity. I truly believe it's a different kind of opposition than what you see across the world with people getting physically, you know, attacked and those sorts of things. But today it's more of a mental, more of an emotional attack. It's a, words of putting down, you know, just, you know, all sorts of things. I mean, Christians, I don't have to explain that. We've all been through them. We all see that, right?
Well, and even in some cases, depending on where you're at, it could get as far as like they're trying to shut your business down.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so like if you're trying to stand up for what you believe in and stand up for what you believe is biblical.
Very true.
And then people could come in and try to burn your business down, smash your windows, or get you shut down, get you sued and like paying all these fines. So, I mean, there's definitely some legit some legit persecution, but we're not being, murdered for our faith, but
Very true.
there are people who are trying to take away livelihood and ruin your life essentially.
And that's one of the blessings. Like I said, there's opposition in being a Christian, but there's also, I think, a lot of people, I've seen it, I guess, as a Christian, and in knowing people that aren't, Christian, maybe they're, or even the same denomination or whatever, but it's like when you see people that live by a set of values and ethics and morals, you want to work with them that much more, right?
Absolutely.
And they may not look at you and say, oh, I want to work with him because he's a Christian, but the reason they do want to work with you is because you follow Christ. Right. And what you're living outwardly is an expression of your faith. Therefore, they want to work with you more. Like, that is I don't want to say a secondary blessing, right? But like the main blessing is just knowing Christ. Oh, yeah. And what comes of that is, things like that,
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. One of the things that popped in my head while you were talking about, recognizing the Lord's will in your life. Like, I think for me, doing what I'm doing now with Help Goes with Able Founder, right? Like, it was a recognition of the Lord's will in my life, right? How did you because you said you felt like that was a call back to that. How do you recognize that? Because I know a lot of Christians that struggle with recognition of the Lord's will. It's one of the things I've struggled with the most as a disciple,
It's tricky because sometimes in this case, I just felt so disconnected. I felt disconnected from God. I felt disconnected from my family. I just kind of felt disconnected from everything.
Yeah.
And then just being completely transparent, like slipping back into old sin habits that, were that kind of stuff started creeping back in. And once I felt disconnected from God and disconnected from family, that's kind of the thing that follows that. And the natural cycle of things is sin creeps in, and then the next thing you know, you hate your life. You don't know why.
Yeah. Sure.
But essentially, like the thing
feels so good. It's like maybe go out in the sunlight, read the Bible, and you might feel a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe because the trail's over here and you're over here in the thorns and the weeds, just like rolling around like an animal.
We are the arbiters of our own suffering many times,
Yeah, we just throw ourselves off the trail. Right? Yeah. Why am I suffering? But that was definitely a red flag and an indicator where it's like, I should not feel like this. I just feel wrong. Something feels off. And lots of times that could mean that you're just out of the will of God.
Like unsettled? Would that be?
Unsettled, definitely.
Yeah.
No peace, no like feeling unfulfilled.
Yeah.
Like unsatisfied. Like as my general demeanor.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have, I think it's okay to have little moments of that.
Sure.
But that shouldn't be your base, that shouldn't be how you always feel.
Yeah.
So sometimes you won't know for sure that it's the will of God until after you take action. And once I quit the job, I felt so much peace. I felt so much freedom. I felt so connected. I felt so good about everything.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. Yeah. I feel like sometimes, like you said, you have to make the action. You have to take the action to know if it was the right decision or not, right? Like God doesn't take away the agency, right? He created us as free, to have free will, and to be to act right and on our accord, whether it's right or wrong. And I find it really interesting that even when He manifests His will to us, we can still make the opposite decision. And I love what you said there is, I feel like a lot of times you'll know pretty quickly that this was not the right move.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then other times you kind of feel like you're like, it's like the Israelites, you're lost in the wilderness a little bit. And you're like, we're going in circles for 40 years. I'm told I'm on the right path. And I think that's actually one of the hardest, to me, that's one of the harder places you can be in your life is when you feel like, I feel like I made the right decision. I feel like I'm in the Lord's will, but nothing is happening.
Yeah.
Nothing is coming to fruition, right? Like you doubt on the question. And as a Christian founder, like there's been a lot of times that we've been at this for about a year now, right? And it's like, man, there's a lot of doubt that comes in. Like today I was experiencing that. And I'm like, man, am I made for this? Can I do this? Like, am I making the right decision here? Like and yet I still feel like I'm on the right path, but there is sometimes the man is not coming. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's not falling from the sky and you're starting to feel the hunger a little bit,
Yeah. So I think
Yeah, go ahead.
In those situations, because I've felt that a lot too, where I feel like God's telling me to do something and I do it, and I'm like, this kind of sucks actually. Like, did I make the wrong move?
Right, yeah.
Did I not hear you clearly?
Yeah.
But the thing that I noticed was that how I think about how do I feel when I'm actually in the presence of God and I'm connected with Him? What is my heart posture? What do I feel about that situation when I'm not in the midst of the crappy part of it?
Yeah.
Because as long as I can
Have baseline how you feel once like your foundational. Is that what you're saying? Like
I'm saying like when I'm in prayer and when I'm in worship and I'm like feel like I'm in His presence and I'm feeling Him, I'm experiencing Him. What does it feel like at that moment when I think about my business, when I think about the choice of like whatever His will is, whatever He's called me to do? Do I have peace with it in that moment?
Yeah.
Do I feel excited and like, all right, like this was a good choice. Like even though everything's not looking right now, this was the right choice. I always look at how I feel when I'm with Him, as opposed to when I'm just like in the hustle or in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's really hard to try to have that. I don't know, because we get so busy in our minds. We get so busy that we miss that little whisper.
Yeah.
And
There's so many voices competing for the attention, right?
yeah, yes. And then we start looking at YouTube videos of like how to fix this issue or how to learn this, how to do that. And when it's like take it before the Lord in prayer and see what He says, get His opinion on it, and like really get our hearts dialed into what He is speaking to us in that moment. And yeah, so I try to go based on what I feel then. And usually when I'm like, God kind of has a way of making us feel like superheroes.
Sure.
Kind of like a good dad would do with their own child, you know, it's like, you can do this. Like, this is right.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's like, yeah, no, this is bad.
Experience. Yeah.
Yeah. You should stop this, or you should, you should quit, or you should do this.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times people think of maybe some Christians, I don't know, but I know a lot of friends that I have that are, non-believers, right? Love them to death. They're good people and all that sort of, but they view God as like a grandpa.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like when I see my dad with my kids, it's like, they're never doing anything wrong. There's no discipline. It's like, we can do whatever. You're doing fine. It's not, that's not how God is a father. He's not a grandfather, right? And fathers, they celebrate the wins. They teach hard lessons. They discipline.
Yep.
And they're supposed to tell how it is, but they love you.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I know, like, I view myself as a dad, right? And I'm like, my job is not to coddle my children.
No.
Like if they hurt, like if they mess themselves up, like my son did the other day. Oh my gosh, dude. He dove head first into the bookshelf the other day and he swooped him up and loved him and, kissed on him and got his, ice pack on stuff and, figured it out. Right. And
consequences.
100%. But there's other times, man, where he just trips and falls, or my daughter, and they cry and they whine, but they're totally fine. And you're like, no, you got to get up, man. Yeah, let's go. Or they're teaching us with my daughter, right? She's in a stage now in her life. She's very defiant and it's very difficult for my wife and I at times, and it's just like, there's those teaching moments of like, look, I want to be loving towards you. And not that you take the love away. I shouldn't say that, but I want to be kind or whatever. But in this moment, I have to tell you, I have to discipline.
Yeah.
And I have to say, look, it's time for a timeout. It's time for you to go sit in your room and take a breather, right? Or there's time for me, maybe it's just time for me to give you a hug and say, the way you're acting right now is not appropriate, but I still love you.
Yeah.
And this is how you should be acting, right? So I feel like, anyways, I put all of that to encompass. That's what the Lord does with us, essentially.
Absolutely.
More loving level, and all of those things, when it feels like, I don't say punishment, but a reprimand or a disciplining or no, this is what is best for you, right? It is all out of love, because God is love. Mm-hmm. That's something I struggled with for a long time, was thinking like God really is like, He is the essence of love. Because you look at people and you ask them if they don't believe in God, say they're atheist or whatnot. Where does love come from? Is it just a chemical reaction? Because they can't explain it. They can't explain love. They can't explain consciousness. They cannot explain it. There's no scientific explanation for that, right? And to believe that everything is materialistic is, I think, ridiculous. And I'm somebody that believes, like, I believe in the scientific method. I believe that science is there to show us, you know, how the world works and how the creation was made. Like, I don't deny science by any means.
No.
But to believe that it can explain everything like love and consciousness is a joke, honestly, right? And I think
and morals.
And moral, explain the objective morality of people, right? Exactly, 100%. We could go to, it's a whole different conversation. The reason I bring that up, though, is that love has to come from somewhere. Right? And he is the author of that love.
Yeah.
He's the direct source of that love that we feel, you know? Yeah. I think about, I really got into studying near-death experiences, NDEs.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Really interesting stuff. And like 98, there's a book called Imagine Heaven. John Burke is the name of the author. And he wrote a book, obviously called Imagine Heaven. I just said that. But he interviewed 1,500 near-death experiencers. But like quantifiable, like this was not like just talking to them, like it had to be like proven and go through like this. He's an engineer by trade and went through all this stuff. And 98% of them, I believe is 98%, purported when they died and they would float above their body, like almost all of them they'd see, and they would go through this experience of travel and they would be brought into this presence and they would know immediately, I'm in the presence of God and all I feel is this love that I cannot explain.
Wow.
It's immediate. This love just overlaps, you know? And to know, going back to our conversation, right, that love is with you in those moments.
Yeah.
The distress and the fear and the feeling of like, I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. I feel like I'm following your will. And even if you're not following the will, and even if you're messing up and you're living in sin, that love is still present.
Yeah.
We're just the ones that take us the step back from it.
Yeah.
Not the Lord.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so true. And it's kind of, we need to, and this is why community and having like mentors and godly men and women in your life.
Yes.
Because sometimes our radios are just so out of tune.
It can be lonely as a founder. I've learned that.
It can. Absolutely.
Even with co-founders, it can be a really lonely journey.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely.
So the idea of community is something I don't think we talk about enough as founders, you know?
Yeah. Where you can bring stuff to people. Because sometimes I'm not hearing clearly and I'm not in my right mind. But when like we get direction from one channel on our radio and we're over, God knows where, just all over the place, just like cranking a dial. It's like, how do we get it? Where was it? So when we have other like, even our wives or our friends, whoever it is, where we can like talk to them, be like, I'm struggling. Like, this is really difficult.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, let's pray. They help us get back into that, find that channel again, get in tune with what did God say? Where do you really feel that peace? Like, ignore the situation. Where do you feel that peace?
Yeah. That is to me probably the number one indicator that you're doing the right thing. Like Augustine, right? Yeah. Early Christian philosopher, right? St. Augustine, a big fan of this works. He said, there's a quote, I think I said it before in another episode of, our hearts are restless until they rest in you. And that's that peace he's talking about, right? And Augustine actually struggled a lot with a lot of different temptations and struggles, and he writes about them extensively, you know? And that was his point of, man, I've been restless everywhere I've searched, everything I've done until I rested in you. And then that peace is what sustained him, that's True. And that's, for me, if I would have any advice, I'm sure you'd say the same thing with a Christian founder, a faithful founder, right? You seek the peace, not the joy, not the world not the worldly happiness, right? Not the worldly joy, because the world doesn't really offer joy. Let's seek the peace of the Lord, that it goes beyond what we know what Paul says, beyond all understanding.
Exactly. And I would say, just expanding on that peace is not this thing that's floating out. Peace is Jesus. Yeah. It's the person of Christ. It's who he is.
The Prince of Peace.
So you're seeking him. And that's, we talk about the will, we talk about our callings. Like, I'm called to be a missionary. I'm called to be a musician. I'm called to do this. the only thing Jesus called us to do is to follow him. That's our calling. And those other things will come along with it.
I love that.
You know, so, and it's Matthew
So true, man.
6:33, I think it is, where it's like, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So
Amen.
we get hung up on the stuff, and it's just about the person.
That's so true. Yeah. I'm a big believer in finding the truth. You know what I'm saying? And for a long time, like, I identified as Christian, but I don't feel like I knew what that meant. I know I didn't know what that meant. I thought I did, you know? And
yeah, same.
And I got really into like stoicism, right? And philosophy, which look, those things are fine. Like, I'm not saying, but and there's truth in those things. But what you quickly realize is that truth stems from the ultimate truth, who is Christ. I am the truth, the way, and the life, right? Like, you're looking for you hear all the time, I'm looking for my way. I'm looking, you know what I'm saying? I'm looking for my truth. I hate, I shouldn't say hate. I really dislike moral relativism as a philosophy. I think it's very dangerous, you know?
Definitely.
I'm looking for my truth. I'm looking for my way, right? You never hear I'm looking for my light, but it's, but you like, no, you don't need to look for your way.
Yeah.
You don't need to look for your truth. You need to look for the way.
Yes.
For the truth, and you will find the peace in the person of Jesus Christ, you know? And going back to the will thing, I recently learned this. It was on that Instagram. I can't remember the guy's name, but it really resonated with me because this was like a couple months ago, and I still think about it. Now, I was thinking about the idea of will and following, like we've talked about, following the Lord's will and finding that will for yourself. And he was talking about that as well. And he was like, I really searched for this. And he was like, it came to me in this thought. He said he had this thought, right? And he said, the thought said, which I believe obviously, and he said was a spirit, right? Whatever you can do that leads you to love me more than anything, to love me fully in that thing, that is my will.
Yeah, it's good.
You know what I'm saying? That to me, like, really resonated. I'm like that job that you had, you were really struggling with that. Clearly you weren't able to love the Lord with all your heart, mind, and soul where you were. Right. And you leaving and doing what you're doing now as a faithful founder it's been great that you've been able to supply for your family, and you feel fulfilled and you feel happy, and you're like, I don't work for this place I don't like anymore. You know what I'm saying? But from what I'm hearing from you is that it led you to love the Lord with might and strength and full heart, right? And that's what the Lord doesn't care what you do.
Exactly.
You could be a garbage man, which we need y'all, by the way. Amen. What you do. Yes. You can be a soldier, or I was a long time ago, a founder, a teacher. Doesn't matter, right? Employee. It just doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Are you able to love the Lord fully in that vocation? Yeah. If no, you're not supposed to be there.
That's right.
That is the will of the Lord.
So true.
Yeah. I don't know.
Dang, that's good.
That, but
but it's all right. Yeah, I think that's just Mike down to like
slam this on the table. Mike,
I think it comes down to like what is important in life, because we get so caught up in the stuff of life and careers and goals, and we're very goal driven and accomplishment driven people in our society, especially. But I remember a story from one of my mentors in Africa. He talked about this man in Africa who just lived his whole life under a palm tree, and he would kind of eat the food that came and would work odd jobs here and there, but he just sat on the beach and like would chill under a palm tree and relaxed. And then he said across on the other side of the world, you have this man who went to 10 years of college and worked 80 hours a week so that when he turned 65, he could retire and sit under a palm tree on the beach. Yeah. So it's just like,
it's a great parable, isn't it? Yeah.
We just get so caught up in the stuff. And I feel like if we really try to seek first the kingdom and do things the Jesus way and live the Jesus style of life, it'll just look so much healthier and so much better than what I think society could ever offer us.
Yeah. I think everyone's searching for like, oh, what's healthy for me? Like which I think is important, but the Lord is a great physician. He's a great healer.
He's health. Yeah.
He is true. He is. We need to wrap up. I want to ask you one more question because you talk about ambition and goals. I think in order to be a founder, you need to be ambitious, goal-oriented. One of the things that I've been struggling with, or not maybe not struggling, but wrestling with the idea of like, how do I harmonize my ambition and wanting to be successful with what the Lord has said,
you know, and in living a humble life.
Yeah.
And you know, and if someone asks for a shirt, give them your cloak as well, which I actually just learned a lot of history and context behind that parable, which is really interesting.
I would love to hear that after the.
Yeah, for sure. But anyways, but you know, balancing ambition with, you know, your love for the Lord. I mean, I'm not sure if you've ever thought about that, but
yeah, I think it's so important to like be a person of action. And for me personally, I found that I get so much more done and I'm so much more productive when I'm not stressed out and when I'm not operating out of fear or striving, really.
yeah,
And I feel like there's a difference between working and striving. And when I am stressed and I'm in my work mode, no, I shouldn't say work mode, because I do have there's a good work mode and a bad work mode.
Yeah.
Where when I'm working out of a place of stress and anxiety and like trying to grind and hustle and like force my way into something,
Yeah.
it's different than when I am being driven by there's almost like there's a grace on it. And there's just a different energy that comes with working out of a place of knowing this is what I'm supposed to be doing, as opposed to working out of a place of I need to do this so that I can achieve this thing. Like it's
that you're feeling what you're called to do, like that
yeah,
calling you, like
and I'm working. It's good to work out of a place of I'm contributing and I'm doing something that's productive and like this just feels right, as opposed to I'm doing this thing because I'm lacking and there's almost like a negative focus to it.
Yeah.
So when I feel secure in my identity, when I feel at peace, when I feel it's almost like working out of a place of rest.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a oxymoron.
Do you feel like trying to think how to phrase this question? Like I believe one of the purposes, obviously the ultimate purpose is to know God through his son Jesus Christ, right? And to follow him and to be with him again, right? That is the purpose of our lives, right? And to grow in Christ. But I feel like one of like the sub purposes, I guess, right, is to fulfill our potential. Like God made us with potential, like almost unlimited potential, right? Because he calls us children of God. He adopts us, right, into his, you know, into his family, and he is the creator of our souls, right? And we know that God is limitless. He is omniscient, omnipower, you know, all those things, right? He is unlimited. He is the thing that was before all things and had created all things and cannot be contained, right?
Yeah. And
so if we're created by a God as amazing as he is, I feel like our potential is almost limitless, right?
Oh, it is.
Yeah, because I say almost because we're not God, clearly, right? And we do have a limit, right? Because of what we are, right? You know, with that being said, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that of feeling potential. And I guess going back to honoring the creation it's, hey, you made that vase. Well, now it's time to fill it with wine or the flowers in it and to fulfill its potential. Right?
I would say just humility is probably the number one thing. I feel like pride hijacks so many people's potential. Absolutely. And then the Bible is so clear. God is so clear. He gives grace to the humble. And I think if we're, and then going back to the work thing, like I think having ambition and goals is like amazing. It's a great sign that you're not being lazy, you know? It's like,
right. Yeah.
But
the Bible talks about slothfulness, right? Like that is
so bad,
sin, right?
It's terrible.
There's clearly a balance, right?
Yeah. But then I found the phrasing I was looking for. It's like working out a place of passion and fulfillment. You get so much more done. You're so much more productive. So it's like, we need to find that place of passion and fulfillment. And then obviously we're not always going to feel like working, you know?
Very true. Yeah.
But even in that, it's like, all right, no, like kick myself in the butt a little bit, like be my own boss, make myself work.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's you're the most satisfied when you're working out of that place of passion and fulfillment. And when you're doing that, you're way more likely to reach your potential, you know, the highest points.
Yeah.
Because if
no, not God, he can fill the vase. He's the one that pours the water. He's the one that puts the flowers in, right? It's not us, right? It's the creation, yet he fills us.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, it's probably a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like the stock market. It's a journey. If you if you put an investment in like 15 years ago, you might have a few heart attacks along the way, but if you check it now, it's probably way higher than it was 15 years ago.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, yeah, if it was made in the right thing.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So if you have a peace with God and it's like, all right,
Yeah.
I really feel
put it in
I really feel like this is
Not
right.
Blockbuster, you know, that's like, that's for you.
Avoid the blockbusters are from the devil.
Yeah.
Apple and Tesla and all that's from the Lord. Just follow those.
Yeah.
But I think just also having grace for yourself too, where if you are feeling burnt out, if you're feeling discouraged, take a step back, take a breath, and just remember it's a journey. And you could just be in a really low point right now, but a year from now, you could be at a super high point. You just got to stick with it if you feel like that's what God wants you to do.
I feel like I need to say this as we end today to the Christian founder, the faithful founder that's listening to this is I believe that a part, and maybe the most important part of being a faithful founder is the transformation that takes place. Like allow the transformation to occur because there's a lot of suffering, a lot of hardship being a founder. There's also a lot of opportunities to be prideful and you need to humble yourself and bridle the passions and find the balance. Like there are so many, it's like a microcosm of life in being a founder, the highs and the lows, the hardships, the blessings, right? All those things. And it transforms you. It changes you. It has to, if you're doing it right, you will walk away a different person, right?
Yeah.
But when you're doing that, when you've yoked yourself with Christ in that journey, the transformation is to serve an entirely higher purpose, right? And that would be my message to any faithful founders to embrace that transformation, as you have clearly.
So good.
Awesome. Well, on that, thanks, TJ. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me.
Blessing to have you here, brother. If you don't know Jesus, get to know him. It's worth it. We're out of here.